What you're going to be making. A solenoid is nothing more than a coil that you just wrap a length of wraps, right? The coil assembly that you create is going to act like an electromagnet, just like up there at that table, the one that you were working with. So what happens is you get a field through here. You have a north end and a south end, depending on which way you pass the current through it. But it's going to act no different than a bar magnet. That's what you're going to be building. What this was supposed to show when you sprinkle the iron filings on it is not only that you have a field through it, but there's even a field around each individual wire. And it should have looked, if I can get to the board here just a second. I can draw the coil two different ways. I could draw a coil this way, hooked up to a power supply of some sort, or I could draw it this way. This is like a cross section. What's happening here? If your current is flowing in this coil, you could figure out which way the field would be, just like you already learned. If you have current going through a wire, the direction of the current will give you an idea what the field's going to do. The field's going to be around that thing. The field's going to be going in on this side, out on this side, like this. X's represent like the tail of arrows. Dot represents the point of an arrow. So the field is going around like this. Okay, here I have, let's say the current is doing that. Now down here, what would that look like? If the current's doing this, it's going into the board up there. It's coming out of the board down here. Now, take a look at any one of those wires. Right there, the current's going into the board. So if I were to grab that wire with the current going into the board, if the current's going into the board, and I were to grab that wire with my thumb in the direction of the current, see which way the field would be. I'm going to have a field going around that wire going this way. The same thing's happening here. The same thing's happening here. The same thing's happening here. Down here, current's coming out of the board. If I grab that one, my fingers now say the field's going around like this. This one's also got a field going around like that. This one also has a field going around like that. This one also has a field going around like that. Those add up to make your field inside your coil. Each one adds up to create more field, adding to the total. More wraps, more field total. Stronger electromagnet, stronger coil. Ought to give you a better shot. What happens is you add more wraps. Besides giving you a better coil, how about wire having resistance? So as you add more wraps, aren't you adding resistance? Isn't that going to bring down your current? You need a lot of current to get a strong field, but you need a lot of wraps. There's a crossover there. There's going to be a point to where adding more wraps won't work so well anymore because you're going to be diminishing your current too much. You got to try to figure out how much you want. When you do that, you're going to be given a coil of wire, a big spool. How much of it do you want? If you look at what people did other years, typically they're using about 130, 150, 160 grams of wire. What you have on your spools is over twice that. So if you think you're going to wrap the whole coil with every bit of wire you got, you're probably going to have a pretty weak one. What's more important is that you make it really, really consistent and careful. Because what happens, well, think about this. If you make this, suppose I'm going to put a whole bunch of wire, I'm going to wrap a real long coil. Well, if you wrap a real long coil, this wire right here, its field's diminishing as you get further out, right? So what happens when you get clear over to this end, if you have a great big, real long coil? Over here you might have a little field and a little field and a little field, but as you're gaining more over here, you're getting farther away from over there. So do you want to make it real long? Probably not. How about this? Maybe I'll make it thick. I want more wraps. So I'm just gonna keep wrapping it wider and wider because it's gonna pack out, right? It's gonna start getting wider. If you keep packing it wider and wider, what's that gonna do? Now the distance from there to the middle is, like if I wrap another layer and another layer and another layer, the field around out here, by the time you see, that feels weaker by the time you get to the middle. So you don't wanna make it real fat, you don't wanna make it real long, but you want to get it really tight, consistent, right? A good shaped coil, a well-formed coil is better than a whole bunch of wraps just haphazardly wrapped on it.